all over the world, literally, from our own country to South Korea, Indonesia, India, you name it, ask me about how they can make their way in male-dominated fields like politics or business. And I shorthand advice to them, starting with one of my favorite sayings from one of my personal heroines, Eleanor Roosevelt, who said back in the 1920s, every woman in public life needs to develop skin as tough as rhinoceros hide. And so think about that. We're lucky now, we have a lot of good lotions. But it's a pretty good metaphor. Because it's not easy, whether it was 1920s America, 2014 America, or anywhere else in the world, it still is hard. Secondly, women, especially young women, have to learn how to take criticism seriously but not personally. You know, your critics can sometimes actually turn out to be your best advisors, because they might say something that we need to hear and our friends won't say to us. So it's worth listening and keeping an open mind. But at the same time, the reason I say take it seriously, sort it through. See what the motivation is. See whether you think it applies. Ask a friend. But don't take it personally so that it knocks you down, makes you feel like you can't get up again, that your ambition is somehow illegitimate. Don't get tied into knots about what others say and think. We all know that women are judged often on different criteria. That's still the reality. When my friend, Julia Gillard, the former Prime Minister of Australia, faced outrageous sexism, there were some people who just said, well, that's just what happens. What a terrible indictment of us, that that's just what happens. So we have to admit that many women are not only held to a different standard, we hold each other and we hold ourselves to a different standard. A combination of self-doubt and perfectionism can become major obstacles to advancement. So how do we develop that confidence in our abilities? And how do we develop the willingness to take risks, even to fail? Well, women have to dare to compete. Now, it's easy for me to stand up here because I have won all of these lessons through very hard labor over many years. Fighting with the perfectionist gene, for example, a lifelong struggle. The gene is so little, I'm so much bigger. And it's always surprising to me how many young women think they have to be perfect. I rarely meet a young man who doesn't think he already is. I've employed lots of young people over a long career. I say to a young woman, my goodness, I'd like to give you additional responsibility, or I'd like you to take on this new job. Invariably, first words out of her mouth, do you think I can? I'm not sure I can. You really think I can do it? Well, of course, why would I be asking you if I didn't think you could? For the young men that I've had the same conversations with, it was like, well, it's about time. And you need friends and colleagues and supportive people around you so that it's not just what you hear inside your head that can be a constant chorus of criticism to give you a firmer foundation. Now, back in the late 1990s, when I was First Lady, and people in New York started suggesting that I run for the Senate, I honestly thought they were crazy. I had never lived in New York. No First Lady of the United States had ever run for anything. And so I said, no, absolutely no. And they kept coming back, and they did have something of an ulterior motive, because The Republican candidate was then Mayor Rudy Giuliani, and they could not think of another sacrificial lamb besides me. So we had these conversations. They would push, I would retreat. And this went on for months. Then one day in March, as part of my First Lady responsibilities, I was actually in New York for an event for young women athletes. And hanging above our heads was the name of a documentary that was going to be presented on HBO about all the great women American athletes going back a century. And the name of the documentary was Dare to Compete. So I was introduced by the captain of the school's girls basketball team, a tall, attractive, energetic young woman. She did a nice job introducing me. I went up, shake her hand to thank her. She bent down, she whispered in my ear, "Dare to compete, Mrs. Clinton, dare to compete." I thought, oh my gosh. For years I'd been telling young women to step up, participate, go for what you believe in. And here was this young woman saying the same thing to me. It really got me thinking, and slowly but surely led me to running for the Senate. I tell you that story because I think there are times in all of our lives